Normally in horror, a good monster is one that you're a little bit afraid of seeing, the kind you hide behind your hands from when you sense a jump scare is coming, or cringe when you know you're about to see someone get their head ripped clean off their body. The Invisible Man, however, does the unexpected. In this film, unlike literally any other monster, you want to see him. You're not afraid of him because of what he looks like, in the way you might be afraid of the Babadook or the girl from The Ring, because he looks like nothing. I mean, he's literally invisible. It's a smart and subversive film, and there are about 1,000,001 things you might not pick up on when you first see it. Some may say these things are, invisible. Now before I go on, I've got to warn you, this video is full to the brim with spoilers, so continue at your own peril. I'm Amy from What Culture, and here's 10 hidden things you missed in The Invisible Man. 10. Cecilia's medication. The opening sequence of The Invisible Man could pretty much be described as 10 minutes of unrelenting tension as Cecilia escapes her abusive boyfriend. Consequently, you may be too focused on watching out for danger to notice the little details that later become very important. As she throws the final things into her bag to leave, we notice 2 key items. She packs 2 medications into the bag. One is her diazepam and the other is contraceptive pills in their classic white and pink packaging. Now we find out all about the diazepam, but the contraceptives have a darker backstory. Cecilia later reveals that Adrian was obsessed with her having his child, and that she was taking her contraceptives in secret, biding her time until she could leave. Unfortunately, we find out that Adrian had been swapping her pills for placebos, meaning that Cecilia actually fell pregnant before managing to escape. It's one of his greatest power plays, but also one of his greatest downfalls. When Cecilia later threatens to kill herself and the child is when he makes himself vulnerable to her attack. It was just a little pill packet at the start. We had no idea it was going to make all hell break loose. 9. Cecilia's name. Unless you're really into your etymology, this Easter egg is actually easier to miss than not. The Invisible Man is based off of H.G. Wells's 1987 book, with which the film shares its name. However, the original story only inspired the titular character, and Cecilia is actually a completely novel creation. Choosing her name was completely up to the filmmakers, and it seems rather a happy coincidence that she's named so aptly for her character. I say this because the name Cecilia is derived from the Latin word caecus. Caecus means blind or eyeless, and Cecilia's biggest problem is her inability to see her stalker or to articulate his appearance to anyone else. To comment further on how she's often referred to as C for short, may be clutching at straws, but it is a fun observation. 8. The almost invisible people. Aside from the actual invisible man, wherever Cecilia goes, there seems to be at least one man-shaped silhouette hidden in the background. It begins in the basement of her house in Griffin's workshop, where she's watched over by 4 black suits as she frantically disables the security cameras. One night at James's house, Cecilia feels as if she's being watched, so she steps out into the hall and is backlit by the back door window. The coats hung next to it look eerily like a human figure pressed up against the wall. These shapes are littered everywhere, from the silhouette posters in the mental health facility, which actually have a hidden message all of their own, but we'll get to that, to the covered up statue in her and Adrian's former home that looks like something straight out of Scooby-Doo. The hat and coat in Sydney's bedroom seem to be the most obvious instance of this, and they have the added benefit of being a callback to the original design of the 1984 Invisible Man. It also just so happens that in Sydney's room, the Invisible Man was actually there for real at the same time, and he was taking pictures of you sleeping. Gross. 7. The clever camera work. Lots of shots throughout the film may make you feel uneasy, but you can't necessarily figure out why. In his commentary on the film, director Lee Whannell explained this is purposeful. He wanted to frame shots just slightly too wide or offset to leave room for the Invisible Man in the frame. He could be there at any point, you just can't see him. Take the locked wide shot in the kitchen scene. Whannell revealed that many crew members questioned whether this would be effective or if it was lacking in coverage and movement, but he insisted that his vision was something that needed to be leaned into in order to work best. And it does work. As the police officers question Cecilia, you can almost see the man standing in the perfect space off to the right. Or when Sydney proposes a girls' night, there's standing space left next to her for the Invisible Man to do the unthinkable and punch a little girl directly in the face. One slightly different but equally clever shot is the tracking shot of Cecilia walking around James's house. Some people think it's a POV shot from the Invisible Man, but Winnell clarifies it's actually a follow shot, where the audience is looking at his back. Or rather, we would be if we could actually see him. 6. The Invisible Man's barely visible presence. If we can't see him, we can just about hear him and that insect-like buzz of the cameras, but there are some other subtle ways that Winnell confirms Adrian's presence that some people might have missed. Maybe the most famous of these affirmations is the handprint on the glass shower door, just moments before Cecilia finds her pill bottle has been left out for her on the counter like a calling card. The interesting thing with this, however, is that even though the image of the handprint was used in both the trailer for the film and its DVD cover art, they chose to remove it from the final cut of the movie itself. Winnell decided that finding the pill bottle in the same room you're showering in, despite never seeing anyone enter or exit, was scary enough as it was. One well-loved moment that did make it into the film, however, is the 2 clouds of breath as Cecilia stands alone on the porch. It's a true "he's right behind you" moment that leaves the audience begging that she turn around in time to see the confirmation of her fears. She's not going crazy. He really is right there. 5. Attic extras. As if the scene wasn't chilling enough as it is, as Cecilia climbs into the attic to find a spread of items laid out for her by her ex, there's some more, even creepier items that most of us missed, sitting just in the background. This is because originally the scene was going to have Cecilia find more than just the knife, the phone, and the portfolio. She was due to also find a pile of her clothes, some of her underwear, and a collection of foods she'd recently eaten. The scene was slimmed down a bit for maximum impact, but you can still see the pile of other items in the back corner if you look closely, and while you're at it, pay attention to the background of the phone Adrian leaves for her. Doesn't that pattern look familiar? 4. References to the originals. Blink and you'll miss a load of nods to the original design of the Invisible Man novel and film. They're scattered throughout the film in a million different ways, often even just with dates. James wears a t-shirt with a date referencing the release date of the original Japanese adaptation. Alternatively, there's references in the names of the characters. Adrian's brother is called Tom in the film, which is the name of Griffin's assistant in the original novel. This makes sense especially as we come to realise how much Adrian uses Tom, how as a younger brother, Tom is, quote, handcuffed to Adrian's wallet, an employee, a servant to his older brother's whims. 3. A hidden Hollywood cameo. As the guards in the mental facility are mown down by the Invisible Man, there's a face amongst them that may be familiar to some. That would be the face of Hollywood stuntman and filmmaker Nash Edgerton, director of 2008 The Square, and stunt coordinator and performer in well-loved films including The Great Gatsby, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and The Matrix. Nash thought he'd shoot his shot and email Winnell asking to come on set and, quote, die. Funnily enough, he didn't exactly get his wishes, playing the one guard that's spared from the wrath of the Invisible Man, left to bleed out in the rain instead of a straight-up execution. His one and only line is to warn Cecilia as she runs to save Sydney, telling her, don't do anything stupid. I'm sure she'll keep that in mind. 2. Homage to horror. Director Leigh Whannell is a horror lover. He's acted in, written, and directed more horrors than I can count. In the parking lot scene, Whannell drops a cheeky reference to one of his own films, a piece of graffiti depicting Billy the Puppet, the doll that the Jigsaw Killer uses in Saw, a film that he wrote and starred in. Without being too cliché, he makes use of horror tropes, like the classic Conjuring duvet pull, the dramatic unmasking, even Adrian as a mad scientist archetype. More specific references include the bandaged man who stares at Cecilia in the hospital, who's based off of the original design of the Invisible Man. A barely noticeable shot of Cecilia staring out the window is actually a replica of Heat's famous scene, of which Whannell says he particularly appreciated Michael Mann's clean framing. Finally, number 1, the second Invisible Man. In the final large attack scene at James's house, the Invisible Man intends to kill Sydney to punish Cecilia for not playing along. But it's not as simple as beating just one enemy in this fight. There's not one Invisible Man, but 2 invisible men working simultaneously. A few clues give away Adrian and his brother Tom's collaboration operation. The first hint at this is the hidden posters in the background of the mental facility. Two men are silhouetted back to back. When Cecilia uses the fountain pen to stab Adrian, his suit begins glitching and looking patchy, similar to the puzzle pattern on one of the silhouettes. As Cecilia and Adrian continue their confrontation in the parking lot, the suit obviously becomes drenched, whilst also continuing to break down. And yet, after Adrian threatens to kill Sydney, the suited man Sydney pepper sprays is completely invisible and without glitches or raindrops. As the fight unfolds, Sydney is wearing a shirt with a jellyfish on it, a reference to Cecilia's earlier accusation that Tom is just a jellyfish version of his brother, a spineless copy. Whilst Adrian torments Cecilia at the facility, Tom is out in the world doing his bidding, and now we know. And that's it for the list of things you missed in The Invisible Man. If there's anything that you've spotted that deserves to be on this list, let us know in the comments down below. And remember to visit whatculture.com for more lists and articles like this every single day. I've been Amy from What Culture, and if you need to find me, I'm the one wrapped in bandages with a fedora and probably some sunglasses.